Hello everyone. Today we are going to start with our new chapter, The Cherry Tree by Ruskin Bond. Let me first introduce you to our author, Ruskin Bond. Ruskin Bond is an Indian author of British descent. He lives in Missouri in India. Most of his works are influenced by life in the hill stations at the foothills of the Himalayas, where he has spent his childhood. He was awarded with Sahitya Academy Award, Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan for his contribution to children's literature. He is considered to be an icon among the Indian writers, and this lesson is part of one of his popular works. Now, let's come to the chapter, The Cherry Tree. In this lesson, our main character Rakesh is a boy and he is telling us about his life experience while growing a cherry tree. This lesson shows us the relationship between humans and nature and how they both work for each other. In this lesson, we also get to know about the relationship between a grandfather and the grandson, and grandfather's role in the guidance to help his grandson grow a cherry tree which gives fruits to them later. Not only this, in this lesson we will get to know about the importance of responsibility and your role towards your responsibility, about the things which you truly love. So let's get started with the lesson. One day when Rakesh was 6, he walked home from the Missouri bazaar eating cherries. They were a little sweet, a little sour, small bright red cherries which had come all the way from the Kashmir valley. Here in the Himalayan foothills where Rakesh lived, there were not many fruit trees. The soil was stony and the dry cold winds stunted the growth of most of the plants. But on the more sheltered slopes there were forests of oak and deodar. So narrator tells us about our main character in the lesson, that is Rakesh. When he was 6 years old, he was walking home from the Missouri bazaar. He was eating cherries, and the narrator has told us about the features of the cherries as well. The cherries were a little sweet, a little sour. They were small, bright red cherries which has come all the way from the Kashmir valley. So he also told us about that why they have come from the Kashmir valley, because in the foothills where Rakesh used to live, foothills, that means a low hilly area which is a base of a mountain. There were not many fruit trees, and the reason was that the soil of that area was stony, and because of the dry cold winds, the growth of the most plant was not possible there. But on the more sheltered slopes, so जहाँ पे ज़्यादा shelter होता है, on those slopes there were forests of the oak and deodar. Rakesh lived with his grandfather on the outskirts of Missouri. So Rakesh, our main character, used to live with his grandfather on the outer parts of the city, that means outer part of the Missouri, just where the forest began. Grandfather was a retired forest ranger. Forest ranger is a person who takes care of the forest. He had a little cottage outside the town. Rakesh was on his way home from the school when he bought these cherries. So from the Missouri bazaar he bought the cherries, and he was coming home from the school. He paid 50 paisa for the bunch. It took him about half an hour to walk home, and by the time he reached the cottage, there were only 3 cherries left. "Have a cherry, grandfather," he said. As soon as he saw his grandfather in the garden, he offered the cherries to his grandfather. Grandfather took 1 cherry and Rakesh promptly ate the other 2. So his grandfather took only 1 cherry, and Rakesh, as he was very fond of cherries, we can see, so he quickly ate the other 2 cherries. He kept the last seed in his mouth for some time, rolling it round and round on his tongue until all the taste or the smell, that is sharp but unpleasant, the taste of the cherry had gone. Then he placed the seed on the palm of his hand and studied it, looked at it. "Are cherry seeds lucky?" asked Rakesh. "Of course." "Then I will keep it." "Nothing is lucky if you put it away. If you want luck, you must put it to some use," said grandfather. "What can I do with a seed?" "Plant it." So Rakesh found a small spade and began to dig up a flower bed. He took a spade so that he can dig up a hole to bury this plant seed. "Hey, not there," said grandfather. "I have sown mustard in that bed. Plant it in that shady corner where it won't be disturbed." Rakesh went to a corner of the garden where the earth was soft and yielding. The earth was soft, so it was easy for him to sow the seed. He did not have to dig, so there was no need to dig it with a spade. He pressed the seed into the soil with his thumb and it went right in. Then he had his lunch and ran off to play cricket with his friends and forgot all about the cherry seed. After sowing the cherry seed, he had his lunch and went off to play cricket with his friend, and he already forgot about his cherry seed. When it was winter in the hills, a cold wind blew down from the snow and went in the deodar trees, and the garden was dry and bare. So in the winter season, the garden was dry and bare, and the cold wind blew down from the snow. So the breeze was freezing cold. In the evening, grandfather and Rakesh sat over a charcoal fire. Why they sat over a charcoal fire? Because it was winter season in the hills and the wind was cold. The breeze was cold. And grandfather told Rakesh stories about people who turned into animals and ghosts, who lived in trees, beans that jumped, stones that wept. And in turn, Rakesh would read to him from the newspaper. Grandfather's eyesight was being rather weak. Rakesh found the newspaper very dull, especially after the stories. But grandfather wanted all the news. So in this paragraph, we get to know about the relationship of the grandfather, that how his Rakesh's grandfather used to tell him stories about the animals about the people who turn into animals or ghosts, or the people who live on the trees, and the beans that jumped, or the stones that wept. And in return, Rakesh used to read the newspaper for him. They knew it was spring when the wild duck flew north again to Siberia. So now, after the winter season, there was spring season. The wild duck flew north again. Here they are talking about the migratory birds who on a particular season they flew from one country or one continent from one to another. Early in the morning, when he got up to chop wood and light a fire, Rakesh saw a V-shaped formation streaming northwards and heard the call of the birds clearly through the thin mountain air. So now he was looking at a V-shaped formation streaming. Streaming means that which is moving freely. He knew. One morning in the garden, he bent to pick up what he thought was a small twig, and found it to his surprise that it was well rooted. So one morning when he went to his garden and he thought there is a small twig, so with his surprise he found it was a well rooted twig. He stared at it for a moment. He looked with a full concentration at it for a moment, then ran to fetch grandfather, calling, "Dada, come and look, the cherry tree has come up." "What cherry tree?" asked grandfather, who had forgotten about it. "The seed we planted last year." So there has been a year now. Last year. "Look, it's come up." Rakesh went down on his haunches. Haunches means in a position just like this. So he was looking this way to the cherry plant, actually not a tree right now. Rakesh went down on his haunches while the grandfather bent almost double and peered. Peered means to look with difficulty and in a concentrating way down at the tiny tree. It was about 4 inches high. Yes, it's a cherry tree, said grandfather. You should water it now and then. Rakesh ran indoors and came back with a bucket of water. Don't drown it, said grandfather. Rakesh gave it a sprinkling and circled it with pebbles. What are the pebbles for? Asked grandfather. For privacy, said Rakesh. So, when grandfather told him how to take care, he told him to give water to the plant. So, he brought the water, but he helped him out to not to drown that plant, just to sprinkle some water, and with the help of the pebbles, Rakesh also gave it a privacy. That means gave it a circle so that it is easy for its growth. He looked at the tree every morning, but it did not seem to be growing very fast. So he stopped looking at it, except quickly out of the corner of his eye. And after a week or two, when he allowed himself to look at it properly, he found that it had grown at least an inch. So now, as he was looking at the tree regularly, so he was not able to find that the tree was growing or not. After a week or two, when he again looked at it properly, the tree has grown to an inch. That year, the monsoon rains came early.